Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're looking at restoring a Matchbox number 64 MG 1100. These were produced around 1966 and were only ever painted in a dark green color. You've probably noticed that this one is not dark green and instead is white. Well, I picked this up a couple weeks ago at an antique store and was scratching my head about it when I got the employee to open the case. He said that he was also intrigued with it and wondered if it was a one-off or a prototype of some kind. While that would be really neat, it would also be highly unlikely. Matchbox cars were produced in England and they really didn't ship over their prototypes and one-offs to the US. Typically prototypes and one-offs are given to employees or they go on permanent loan to employees. Upon closer examination, however, I discovered this car to be a custom, and a fairly well made one at that. The major tip-off for me was that the rivet was painted. This is never done by Lesney on any car I've ever seen, and totally gives this custom away. So my plan here is to restore this car, but like I've done in the past, I'll replace the green color with a new color. Obviously the previous collector of this car also wanted a non-green version for his collection. After removing the rivet, I discovered that the previous customizer had used glue to hold the car together. That and the base was broken. The base breaking on this car is actually very common, or at least I've seen many of them with broken bases over the years. Getting this car apart was a bit of a task as the glue was still holding rather well, and it seemed that the previous owner had placed the window glass back in before the paint had fully dried. When I pulled the windows out, some of the paint came out with it. Over time I was able to remove all the parts and luckily none were damaged by the glue. Now you might think given my last video I would just solder this base back together, and one day I might do that. But it just so happens I have another one of these cars that has a missing windshield, but a perfectly good base. You can see where this is going. Better to have one complete unbroken car than two broken ones. So I'll take this other car apart. So I've gone ahead and removed the white paint from this car. There's still a little bit left along with a small amount of oxidation. So to remove that, I'll go over the car with some steel wool and a brass brush. The car body has a very small amount of pitting, but overall is in great shape. So next I'll wash the body with some degreaser to remove any surface oils and dirt. While the body dries, I'll show you the undercoat I plan to use. This is a small metal flake undercoat from the Redline shop. The nice thing about this metal flake is that it doesn't require any primer. You can use the primer if you like, but I find it's unnecessary, especially if the surface is nice and clean. It's also easy to use in an airbrush. Another great product for this, and something I've used a lot in the past, is the metal color line from Vallejo. It's water-based, however, and you really do need a primer to use it. The metal flake from the Redline shop is urethane-based. For my top coat, I decided to go with yellow. There's not a lot of yellow cars made by Lesney. They seem to save yellow for road maintenance equipment, farm equipment, things like that. They really like shades of green, blue, and red for cars. I put on 4 coats via the airbrush. Here's what it looked like after about 24 hours of cure time. The finish came out really nice, so I didn't feel I needed to risk it by polishing. Now turning my attention to the base. This one is a bit more oxidized than the original, so the first thing I'll do is give it a dip in some phosphoric acid to remove all the oxides. This will also remove any rust on the axles. After the acid, I'll go over the base with a brass brush to polish up the metal and to remove any residue left by the acid. Next, I'll polish the wheels. Here I'll use a Dremel with a polishing wheel and some Plastex polish from Meguiar's. This will also polish the metal axle hub in the center. This really is an important step as it makes the tires look brand new. After the wheels are polished, I'll switch over to the windshield. This ended up being the biggest part of the whole job as sanding off the paint was a real chore. I started off with 400 grit sandpaper and removed all the paint with that. Since there was a few small scratches in the plastic, I decided to sand down the entire thing. I then switched over to a higher and higher sandpaper, removing the lines from the previous grit. Then last, I went over the entire part with the polishing wheel and the Plastex polish, just like the wheels. When done, I feel I restored the plastic close to its original luster. When picking the interior plastic, I chose to go with the original version as my replacement car seemed to have a slight yellow tinge to the plastic. The car does have some suspension to it, provided by this plastic spring. However, you can see the plastic has bent over the years. Since I do have two of these, I decided to drop one into some boiling water and see if I could bend it back without breaking it. And as luck would have it, this actually worked and I was able to get it pretty straight. I'm not sure how long it will last, but I'll take what I can get. And now we're at my favorite part, put the car back together without ruining something you spent hours working on. It actually happens more than I'd like to admit. If I'm going to drop a car, this is normally when that occurs. Anyway, this car went back together pretty easily, especially given the base has been worn by another body for the last 50 or so years. A lot of this project time was spent just cleaning up the glue and paint from the last customizer. But as I said before, nothing was ruined, so I lucked out as far as that goes. I would like to have soldered the base, but the reason you're seeing this video and not the video I had intended is due to a soldering issue that destroyed it. So I'm a little bit timid on the soldering at the moment, and I would have combined the two cars to have a complete unbroken one anyway. By the way, these cars are pretty common if you want a good car to practice on. As you saw, you don't have to remove the wheels, which makes this job much simpler. Anyway, sorry for the rather quick video. As I said, my intended project melted, so I was sort of scrambling to replace it. Let me know what your thoughts are on this one, and I'll see you soon with a new video.